The ancient world was filled with civilizations you've never heard of. Empires that were just as powerful as Rome, ones more advanced than Egypt, and some that held as much influence as Greece. All erased from history. What does it take to erase an entire civilization? As it turns out, not as much as you may think. I'm Mike with List 25, and today I'm exploring 25 ancient civilizations that mysteriously disappeared. But before we begin, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe with that notification bell. It truly helps the channel. And let us know what other history topics you'd like to see next. With all that said, let's go. Before we get into today's list, I want to show you something that's been living on my desk lately. This little thing right here is Fume. It's a flavored air device, not a vape or an e-cigarette, just a lot of clean flavor. Fume isn't about quitting, it's about replacing. You'll still get to reach for something, you just trade what you're reaching for something better. And in case you're wondering, it doesn't run on batteries. It doesn't need charging. It's made from solid wood, so it feels great to hold. And if you fidget like I do, the airflow dial is a lot of fun. It clicks, it spins, and it gives your hands something to do exactly when they need to get busy. Flavor-wise, they've got just about everything. My go-to right now is orange vanilla, but mango and crisp mint are both ridiculously good. You'll probably end up with a favorite of your own once you try it. They've got a deal going too. Use my code LIST when you grab the Journey Pack and you'll get a free fume topper. It's a soft silicone piece that slips over the mouthpiece and gives you a softer feel. It's great if you're the type of person who fidgets or, choose when you think. Over 700,000 people are already using Fume, and since it doesn't have any smoke or vapor, you can use it anywhere. If you've been thinking about changing a habit, now is the time. Check it out at tryfume.com/list or just scan the QR code on your screen. Alright, let's get back to the list. 25. Indus Valley Civilization. I'm starting this journey through lost worlds with the Indus Valley Civilization. They flourished in the Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro between 3300 and 1300 BCE and are one of the world's earliest and most advanced urban societies. They were known for their sophisticated city planning, extremely modern drainage systems for the times, and their extensive trade network. They traded goods all across the world. So what happened? Why did they fade out? The decline of the Indus Valley folks is thought to be gradual and caused by multiple natural disasters. They suffered through prolonged droughts. Key rivers like the Indus changed their course and disrupted trade routes and water supply chains. On top of that, political changes, power shifts, and the migration of Indo-Aryan families accelerated the collapse as urban centers were abandoned and rural communities faded into history. 24. Minoan Civilization. The Minoan Civilization, the most sophisticated players of the Bronze Age in the Mediterranean, lived on Crete from 2700 to 1450 BCE. They were known for their vibrant art, extensive maritime trade, and spectacular palaces. The downfall of this ancient society happened when they lived through several devastating natural disasters as well. For them, it was the 1450 BCE catastrophic eruption of the Thera volcano. It sent tsunamis crashing into the shores of Crete, and the island was covered in ash. As if that wasn't enough, earthquakes further weakened their defenses and infrastructure. But that's not all. The last straw for their people came in the form of a foreign invasion. The Mycenaean Greeks targeted the Minoan community and decided to take it for themselves. Sadly, the conquest was successful, and the Minoan culture was absorbed into the Mycenaean world. 23. Olmec Civilization. While the Mycenaeans were conquering Crete, there was another civilization rising to power halfway around the world. The Olmecs emerged in what is now Mexico around 1200 BCE and were one of the earliest major civilizations in Mesoamerica. Famous for impressive urban centers like La Venta and San Lorenzo, as well as their colossal stone heads, they were at the height of society at the time. Sadly, their disappearance happened around 400 BCE. Much like the others I've already talked about, their downfall had a lot to do with climate changes that damaged crop yield. They also overfarmed and depleted far too much land due to deforestation. Researchers also believe internal conflicts and wars weakened this civilization from within. Despite vanishing, the Olmec culture itself did live on, even when the people did not. The Maya and Zapotec followed their lead when it came to religion, urban planning, and art. 22. Mycenaean Civilization. The Mycenaean Civilization conquered the Minoans and dominated the Greek mainland during their heyday, but they didn't last much longer than the community they destroyed. The Mycenaeans lived from around 1600 to 1100 BCE before everything catastrophically collapsed as the Late Bronze Age fell apart. This wasn't caused by just one thing. From earthquakes rocking cities to droughts and famines devastating the people to mysterious sea peoples and Dorian Greeks targeting them, they were left far too vulnerable to sustain their way of life. The fall of the Mycenaean directly triggered the Greek Dark Ages, which lasted for centuries before the classic Greek city-states rose from the ashes to breathe new life into the land. 21. Cucuteni, Trypillia. Long before the famous Greek and Roman civilizations, there was an incredibly advanced culture in Eastern Europe that most people have never heard about. The Cucuteni Trypillia culture flourished between 4800 and 3000 BCE across modern-day Moldova, Romania, and Ukraine. They produced intricate pottery, created early agricultural practices, and boasted some of the largest settlements of the ancient world. So large that their communities housed thousands of people. Why did these thriving mega settlements end up as ghost towns? Historians believe the answer is that their own success became their ultimate downfall. Intensive farming destroyed the soil and depleted the resources. It became impossible to sustain such large populations. Worsening environmental conditions further stressed their agricultural productivity, and their natural supplies became depleted, forcing their citizens to disperse and create much smaller, more sustainable communities. 20. Nabataean Kingdom. Hidden in the desert canyons of modern-day Jordan lies one of the most spectacular cities of the ancient world, Petra. Carved directly into the rose-colored sandstone cliffs, Petra was part of the Nabataean Kingdom and grew into a thriving 4th century BCE metropolis. The city's vast wealth was accrued by controlling crucial overland trade routes between the Mediterranean, Arabia, and Egypt. Unfortunately, money and power were not enough to save them. Their downfall began in 106 CE when the Roman Empire set its sights on the Nabataeans and annexed the kingdom. While the takeover offered stability for a moment, the Romans gradually shifted the trade routes and started leaning on sea-based routes that bypassed Petra entirely. It caused the great city to collapse. What was left of the Nabataean Kingdom after the Romans overtook it was decimated by an earthquake in 363. It damaged Petra's infrastructure so badly it never recovered. By the 7th century, the city was abandoned and soon forgotten by the Western world. It remained lost until 1812, when a Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt rediscovered the territory. 19. Cahokia. North America had its own metropolis in ancient days that rivaled those across the ocean. The medieval city of Cahokia was located in modern-day St. Louis, and it was massive. This pre-Columbian settlement was a popular urban center that existed between 600 and 1350. In its glory days, it housed tens of thousands of people and featured a sophisticated society that created plazas and massive earthen mounds. Much like Cucuteni Trypillia, their success eventually became their downfall. The growing population depleted resources faster than they could be replenished. The soil became unusable, and huge public work projects required constant materials and labor. And that's not the worst of it. Flooding was also a contributing factor. The loss of crops strained the whole society and social unrest grew. This led to the collapse of political systems and put everybody under pressure. By the end of 1350, the entire city is thought to have been abandoned. Today, earthen mounds still remain and are a silent reminder of a lost civilization. 18. Ancestral Puebloans. The American Southwest cliffsides have secrets carved into them that still puzzle researchers. The Ancestral Puebloans built incredible communities into the landscape between 200 and 1300. Their achievements in architecture are nothing short of extraordinary. They took building to new heights at places like Mesa Verde and erected multi-story dwellings built into cliff faces that housed entire communities. Sadly, around 1300, they were forced to flee their beloved land. A brutal multi-decade drought devastated the region and made farming impossible. Year after year, crops failed and resources became increasingly scarce. Archaeological evidence even suggests that conflict erupted as desperation grew. The Ancestral Puebloans, sometimes called the Anasazi, didn't vanish entirely though. The society migrated south into what is now New Mexico and Arizona. Their descendants became today's Pueblo Indians, and their abandoned cliff dwellings stand as a testament to their resilience. 17. Nabta Playa. Before the pyramids rose along the Nile, a remarkable culture was thriving deep in what is now the Sahara Desert between 6000 and 3400 BCE. You may be surprised to learn that the landscape back then looked nothing like it does today. The region had grasslands, lakes, and seasonal sediments where people herded cattle and built stunning megalithic structures. Researchers believe these stone circles represent some of the world's earliest astronomical alignments and predate Stonehenge by over 1,000 years. The downfall is thought to be slow and inevitable. The Sahara's transformation into the desert intensified, water dried up, and lush pastures turned into nothing but sand. Eventually, the land couldn't support human life, and inhabitants had no choice but to migrate, with many moving towards the Nile Valley. Interestingly, that migration is thought to have contributed to the foundation of early Egyptian civilization. 16. Nok Culture. The Nok Culture emerged in present-day Nigeria around 1000 BCE and holds one of the most intriguing puzzles in archaeology. This lost society left behind some of the African continent's most stunning terracotta sculptures. These figurines were highly detailed, life-size works that showcased incredible skill. And art wasn't their only specialty. The Nok people were pioneers of ironworking and developed agriculture practices that sustained their community for over 1,000 years. So, what happened? The society disappeared around 300 CE, and unlike many civilizations on this list, we don't know quite why. It's assumed that climate change probably disrupted farming, and water sources dried up and the land slowly eroded away. Some theories even suggest they didn't die out, but were simply absorbed into emerging neighboring societies, and their distinct identity faded over generations. Outside of their terracotta art, there is little archaeological evidence to study, and the Nok remain mostly a mystery. 15. Khmer Empire. Deep in the jungles of Cambodia stands the Temple of Angkor Wat, a monument to the Khmer Empire. This lost civilization was one of Southeast Asia's greatest empires. They dominated the region from 802 to 1431, and they were incredibly impressive. From their vast networks of cities to their stunning temples and their sophisticated water management system, they supported millions of people. Their engineering was unmatched. They controlled floods, irrigated crops, and sustained one of the medieval world's largest and most populated urban centers. They were powerful, vibrant, and rich. Until they weren't. As it turns out, that water system they built was their ultimate undoing. Environmental changes caused clogs in the channels and reservoirs. Extreme weather patterns brought everything from devastating droughts to wild monsoons and damaged all infrastructure beyond repair. As they were struggling to maintain life after the disaster, the Thai Ayutthaya Kingdom saw its opportunity to invade and seize the land. In 1431, they delivered the final blow, and the city of Angkor Wat was abandoned. 14. Tiwanaku. We're heading to the Andes for this next missing community. High in the Bolivian Andes, over 12,000 feet above sea level, an empire thrived for centuries. From 500 to 1000 CE, the Tiwanakus controlled the region. They built massive stone monuments and developed farming techniques that helped them cultivate crops in their high-altitude communities. The capital city featured pyramids, temples, and the famous Gateway of the Sun. Around 1000 CE, everything completely fell apart. A prolonged drought devastated the crops and water supplies. As resources became scarce, political instability and social conflict tore the empire to shreds from within. People left the city in droves and dispersed to the countryside, abandoning not only the empire itself, but also all the monuments that were under construction. Although the Tiwanaku Empire collapsed, the cultural legacy continued with the Incas when they rose to power centuries later. They proudly included parts of their mythology and religious beliefs in their own communities. 13. Aksumite Empire. The Aksumite Empire rose to power in the Eritrean and Ethiopian highlands around 100 CE. It's famous for becoming one of the most influential trading states in Africa. They controlled the commerce between India, Rome, and later Byzantium by strategically positioning themselves along the Red Sea. The empire was also one of the first major powers to adopt Christianity as its main religion. Their slow but steady decline was caused by the rise of Islamic powers in the Arabian Peninsula and the Red Sea that shifted trading routes away from Aksum. The economy was completely ruined. Adding to that was the deforestation of the land and overplanting that ruined their soil. It wasn't long before they were unable to support their growing communities. 12. Zapotec Civilization. Around 700 BCE, the Zapotec Civilization emerged in Mexico's Oaxaca Valley. This ancient society built impressive cities like Monte Alban that boasted impressive terraced pyramids and the creation of a hieroglyphic writing system. They thrived for over 2 millennia before external pressures weakened their power. The Mixtec people set their sights on the Zapotec territory, and after capturing key cities, completely eroded their control. And they weren't the only ones after this prime territory. The Aztec Empire also conquered a significant portion of the Zapotec lands. The final blow arrived in 1521. The Spanish conquistadors defeated the Aztecs and stole the land for themselves. The remaining few Zapotec communities were subjugated. Even their use of guerrilla tactics weren't enough to defeat the colonizers. They were forced to submit to Spanish rule and a brutal encomienda system that enslaved them. Like many of these forgotten civilizations, their culture managed to survive. The descendants still live in Oaxaca, with many continuing to follow the traditional practices and languages. 11. Mississippian Culture. I've talked about the Cahokia Society, but that was just one city in a much larger network. The Mississippian culture spread across the Midwestern and Southeastern U.S. and lasted from 800 to 1600. The society built massive mound complexes, created an extensive trade network that connected thousands of miles of communities, and established hierarchical chiefdoms. Their downfall? The Little Ice Age disrupted food supplies and agriculture, making it much harder to feed the much larger population. This caused internal warfare and destabilized the political system. Then, the most devastating blow came when European contact brought diseases like measles and smallpox that wiped out entire populations that had no immunity. Major sites were abandoned, populations were forced to scatter, and the Mississippian society fragmented into communities that bore little resemblance to the grand civilization. 10. Sogdiana. Though Sogdiana controlled key sections of the Silk Road from the 6th century BCE to the 11th century CE, most people have no idea this Central Asian civilization existed. They ran major trade and cultural hubs like Samarkand and Bukhara. Their merchants traveled all over the world sharing their education, goods, ideas, and even their religions. Their downfall came as repeated invasions by Turkic nomads made life nearly impossible for their people. And later, the Arab-Islamic conquests in the 7th and 8th centuries destabilized them even more. Their entire community became restructured, and their religious and political systems were overtaken. Their distinct culture was slowly but surely erased as Islamic powers tightened their grip on Central Asia. By the 11th century, Sogdiana had faded into the broader Islamic world. 9. Harappan Rakhigarhi culture. We're returning to the Indus Valley region, but this time we're diving into the city of Rakhigarhi. Located in present-day India, it was one of the largest and most important cities of the Harappan world. The urban city center thrived as a major hub between 2600 and 1900 BCE and was celebrated for their craft production and trade across South Asia. So what happened? It was an environmental catastrophe that sealed their fate. The surrounding region transformed into a desert, and the Saraswati-Gagarhakra river system, which they heavily relied on, began drying up and cutting off the water supply the people desperately needed. The once fertile land couldn't support the massive population, and people had no choice but to leave. The great city was abandoned and became another casualty in the collapse of the Harappan world. 8. Wari Civilization. Long before the Incas dominated the Andes, the Wari Civilization ruled the Peruvian highlands. They held power between 500 and 1000 CE and were pioneers in their region. They were known for their impressive administrative centers and terraced mountain agriculture. Their farming system was so innovative that it influenced the Inca system centuries later. Unfortunately, even the mightiest empires can't survive when the worst happens. The 9th century brought prolonged droughts, and year after year the lack of rainfall caused massive crop failures. The empire struggled to feed its population, and food shortages sparked such extreme unrest that rebellions erupted. The people rose up against their leaders, and as warfare broke out, major cities were abandoned. By 1000 CE, civilization had completely collapsed. 7. Elamite Civilization. Let's now dive into another forgotten group of ancient people, the Elamite Civilization. They thrived from roughly 2700 to 539 BCE in what is now known as Iran, where they stood strong as rivals to the great Mesopotamian Empire for centuries, building their own cities and writing systems and creating a distinctly unique culture that left its mark on the region. Their strength could not protect them from relentless attacks, however. The Assyrians launched relentless campaigns against the territory, resulting in one of the most brutal wars ever. That war occurred in 646 BCE during the Neo-Assyrian Empire under the reign of Ashurbanipal. The regime destroyed the cities during a total conquest. The Elamites survived, although weakened, and clung to their identity for another century. The final blow happened when the Achaemenid Persian Empire absorbed what was left of Elam. Their political independence came to an end, but their culture profoundly influenced the Persian Empire that conquered them. Their legacy endured long after the fall of their cities. 6. Yam Civilization. Between 3300 and 2600 BCE, the Yamnaya people settled in present-day Russia and Ukraine in the grasslands of the Pontic-Caspian steppe. They're considered a key ancestral culture to the Indo-European world and were absolutely revolutionary for their time. They domesticated horses, built kurgan burial mounds across the steppe, and used wheeled vehicles. Unlike other civilizations on this list, the Yamnaya didn't experience a dramatic or traumatic collapse. Their story is one of transformation due to the large-scale Indo-European migrations, and the Yamnaya people spread across Europe and Asia. They shared their technology, their culture, and their genes as they intermingled with other populations. Their culture gradually dissolved as it was absorbed by the emerging societies around them. The Yamnaya left a wonderful legacy that helped shape the prehistoric development of Europe. Their contributions to linguistics, technology, and genetics persisted long after their culture faded. 5. Rapa Nui. One of the most isolated places on Earth holds one of history's most haunting mysteries. This is Rapa Nui, better known as Easter Island. Polynesian voyagers settled on the land around 1200 CE, and they created a fascinating and unique culture. During their peak, the island supported a thriving society with complex rituals and spectacular construction. Their most famous legacy is the Moai statues that still gaze across the island today. The very achievements that made Rapa Nui so outstanding later became the seed of its destruction. Massive amounts of the forest were cut for the transportation of the Moai statues, the soil began to erode and become unusable, and the island's limited resources were gradually exhausted to the point where they couldn't even build boats to escape. As things went downhill, competition among clans intensified, and in the 1600s an internal warfare broke down the entire society. Their eerie Moai statues are the only evidence they ever existed. 4. Songhai Empire. West Africa was home to one of the continent's most powerful empires in history, the Songhai Empire. Between the 15th and 16th centuries, they controlled major cities like Timbuktu and Gao, formed important transportation passages, and held power over key trans-Saharan trade routes. Their legendary wealth was built on gold and salt, which helped them form an extensive commerce network and a strong administration. Their people prospered for generations. Internal conflicts over the empire's succession are how this society began to fall apart. In 1591, Moroccan Sultan Ahmad al-Mansur decided he wanted the land and sent in his army, equipped with firearms that the Songhai had never battled against before. As you can imagine, their traditional weaponry was no match. The Battle of Tondibi destroyed Songhai's military strength in a single defeat, and the empire rapidly disintegrated into smaller states as its political control collapsed. Their dominance came to an abrupt and brutal end. 3. Cimmerians. The Cimmerians were one of history's earliest horse-riding warrior groups. These fierce nomadic people roamed the Eurasian steppe between 1200 and 600 BCE, and were known for their devastating raids into Anatolia and their clashes with Phrygia and Assyria. Their army struck fear across the ancient world for centuries. Their prominence was short-lived, though. By the 7th century BCE, the Scythians came for them. This clash was absolutely ruinous for the Cimmerians. The rival people had a superior military, and it didn't take long to drive the Cimmerians from their homeland north of the Black Sea. Each defeat weakened the once feared warriors until they could no longer sustain themselves. After a series of crushing losses, the Cimmerians disappeared from the record books. Historians can't confirm if they were absorbed into other cultures or destroyed entirely. Either way, these terrifying horsemen vanished without a trace. 2. Derinkuyu Underground City. Now we're diving into a society that started off in the ancient world and lasted until about 100 years ago. Beneath the rocky landscape of Cappadocia in Turkey is one of the most awe-inspiring architectural achievements in history, the underground city of Derinkuyu. Built by the Phrygians in the 8th century BCE, this construction marvel was a massive subterranean complex that served as a sanctuary. It housed thousands of people in its extensive tunnel network during times of danger. It had living quarters, storage rooms, and even a ventilation system. Derinkuyu's story didn't end with collapse or conquest. Instead, it ended with forced exile. After the Greco-Turkish War in 1923, the Cappadocian Greeks, who inhabited and maintained the city for generations, were forced out of Turkey during a population exchange. They had to abandon their beloved underground home and travel to Greece to start a new life. For decades, Derinkuyu remained largely forgotten until it was rediscovered by pure chance in 1963 by a local man who kept losing his chickens when they disappeared through a gap in his wall. After knocking the wall down, he found a tunnel leading to the lost city. 1. Sumer. For our final ancient society, we're starting at the very beginning with one of humanity's very first civilizations, the Cimmerians. They flourished from around 4500 to 1750 BC in Mesopotamia, and they gave the world some of its greatest innovations. They built the first wheels, shaped the first arches, and invented cuneiform writing. They also created complex irrigation systems and wrote the Epic of Gilgamesh. They are the foundation upon which much of civilization was built. Sadly, they couldn't survive what came next. 200 years of relentless droughts caused the collapse of their agriculture. This then led to the crumbling of their economy and the fall of their kingdom. As if that wasn't bad enough, wars between neighboring kingdoms made recovery impossible. By 1700 BCE, water had disappeared from southern Mesopotamia, and the population was forced to migrate north to Babylon, away from their ancestral homeland. This was the ultimate end for the world's first great ancient civilization. 25 civilizations. Gone. Just like that. Some suffered environmental collapse, others were wiped out by invaders, and a few remain a mystery. Crazy, right? Even crazier? This could very well happen again. Which story fascinated you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed these, make sure to check out our other video, 25 Ancient Technologies from Vanished Empires You Won't Believe. Trust me, you won't regret it. Thank you so much for watching, and if you like learning random facts about random things, well, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that bell so you never miss another one. I'll see you in the next one.